Before we start, a quick note from the editor. This interview was recorded remotely on a phone in the middle of a war zone. So the audio is going to be rough in places and the story unfolds slowly. But what you're hearing is real and we have done everything possible to preserve it. Enjoy.
Welcome to another edition of Underground Strategy. Today we're speaking with Roman Kuzyuk, a man of many layers, first Deputy CEO of Viysktorgservice. I struggle with that word, just so everyone knows, but it means military trade and service, as Roman has explained to me, and it's a very important logistical operation. It's a powerful supply arm of Ukraine's Ministry of Defense from Soviet times. Also, Roman is the author of The Ultimate Beneficiary, Ukraine's first business detective novel, and someone not to be messed with. He's also a blue belt in judo. So Roman brings a rare mix of various skills, and we are delighted to have him with us today. Welcome, Roman.
Hello. I'm very pleased to be invited. Thank you, Tony, and thank you for such a great introduction.
To start us off, can you tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your career, your literature, your martial arts, and how some of these parts connect in your life?
Thank you. A very, very broad and deep question. To tell very shortly, I'd say that my mindful life started when I was 10, when I decided myself to go for judo, to train, and I started my life, more in my hands. From this period, I understood myself, I felt myself as a bit more adult. Started to feel myself that I'm able to make my own decisions. And judo is hard sport, isn't easy. And I trained for 7 years. My best results are blue belt. It is candidate of Masters of Sports. And my good friend, we were sparring partners. He became twice prize winner in Olympic Games in Athens, 2004, and in China 2008, and we were 2 years sparring partners. And this sport, judo, and in general sport, made me maybe as person, highly motivated man. And after that, our trainer very often said us that judo is very good ground, very good to start every other sport. And I also, after judo, I trained sambo, capoeira, breakdance. If you know, breakdance is now Olympic sports. Big tennis, table tennis, swimming, basketball, volleyball. I was team captain of football team for 3 years in band where I worked, and so on. And also in my sport career, there were also racing. I have first degree in racing sports. And all this made my character, and all this led me to write a book, Sports Businessman, where I introduced my point of view how to have a balance in your life with your strong and healthy body and your clear mind to lead you to a happy life and to great career or great business. And my first book is Ultimate Beneficiary, where I put in words another mindset, my professional mindset, where I talked about corporate governance, management, strategy, human resources, system of controls in a great company, in corporation. That is all my background as a lawyer, as a banker, as a corporate secretary, which I gained through my professional life. And afterwards, when I wrote these books, I decided that I want to also feel myself as entrepreneur. And I decided to establish a publishing house in order to publish Ukrainian authors who bring with their words in books their experience, their great, our home, our own national experience in business, in corporate governance, in finance, in auditing, in law sphere, and so on. And, I felt the great feeling of great mission to together these authors and to show our society that there are our own domestic books which, reveal great ideas, great plans, great strategic moves, and so on. And our meeting with you, yes, our acquaintance, Tony, is due to one of my books as publisher and co-author and contributor. We are talking about book Management in Times of War by our great friend, Konstantin Koshelenko. And, I'm very happy that this book gathered great people, great managers together. And in particular, this book gathered you and me together. And due to this fact, we now are talking about on your podcast. That's nice. And maybe it is a very short introduction about my life, about my true personal story.
Thank you, Roman. And it really is an interesting discussion how martial arts formed a foundation for so many things in your life. And then also the other sports that you took part in, your formation in terms of business, and then also establishing your publishing press. And I share your sentiments and send my best wishes to Kostya. He is, as you said, our dear mutual friend. And all of this work comes off the base of his work management in times of war, your work management in times of war, and the good work that you've done publishing and producing and also being a co-author on that important book. I now want to move on to your senior role that you have in Viysktorgservice, which is the organization, for our listeners, a logistical organization within the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. And I want to ask you, in this very important position, what are some of the main challenges that the Ukrainian armed forces face today, and how are you working to address them?
Nice question. If I may answer this question in three parts. I suppose in terms of yesterday, in terms of our story, I'd start about the problem of our armed forces from 90s when we became independent state. And here I remember the wording by Napoleon, if I'm not mistaken. He said, if you don't want to feed your own army, you will feed the army of your enemy. And, maybe the starting of our armed conflict with Russia in 2014 and now the full-scale invasion in 2022 is a direct sequence of that fact that our nation, our politics, our people didn't pay attention. They didn't feed our own army. So I'd say that me also, every Ukrainian are responsible for not feeding, not supplying, not respecting our armed forces in the past. And it was a huge problem. And now we have the results as a full-scale war on our territory. And I think that the problem of today, also there is some Latin wording, pecunia nervus belli, which means in English, money is a nerve of war. It's also a great wording from Latin times. And I'd say that now we need weapon and money in order to buy weapon from outside, from our partners abroad, and also, of course, to make our own weapon, our own drones. Now we can call this war, this phase of war, drone war. And of course, it is very important to fund our army because the money is the nerve of war. And in terms of future problems of our armed forces, I suppose there will be a huge list of very important bullet points of needs and problems, but I want to focus on one of the problems. It is veterans. If you remember, when we created with you as a contributor management in times of war, we asked in particular you and another contributors how we will cope with our problems, how will we rebuild Ukraine after the war. And a lot of contributors said, pay attention to your veterans. Veterans will be a very big part of your society, and you should think of them. You should care of them. And just 2 days ago, in our office, in our concern, Viysktorgservice, we visited a cool guy. He is commander of elite sniper unit of National Guard of Ukraine. He is lieutenant and he has no leg. He has a prothese instead of his leg. He lost his leg during one of his missions, and he is great sniper, and now he commands a unit of snipers, and he is from business. He is businessman, he is from financial business, and now he is a chief of Association of Businessmen Veterans Society in Ukraine. And he tries and he lay all his forces when he is not on war, on the battlefield. He tries to cope with problems of veterans which arise now, today. They begin to arise. And I can imagine which scale of this amount of problems with veterans will lay on the shoulders of our society and our state in future. And I suppose it is one of the main of crucial problems of our armed forces in Ukraine in future. And I suppose in general, in all armies, in all nations, in all times, it is very big question, a very big matter to cope with after the war. Sorry for such a big amount of time to answer such plain question, but still, I hope it will be good for understanding my point of view.
If you're dialed in, drop us a review on your app. Watching on YouTube, hit subscribe to join the conversation. All right, back to it.
It certainly is important, and it does answer the question well, Roman. It's such an important point that you've mentioned there, and as you know, it's one close to my heart. I know Kostia too, and many of our other colleagues out there. Veterans, I can't say enough about the subject, and I don't want to go off topic now, but I know there's a lot of work we are doing in our very small way. We'll do our best to try and help. But veterans, it's so hard, for people. And I don't say veterans only, it's the whole family, the whole street, the whole neighborhood, the whole community, because they used to know Tony, they used to know Roman, they used to know Max, and you're not there anymore. So now your wife is doing a couple of things at home and your kids are doing a couple of things. And if you are lucky to come back, they are doing different jobs and you now try to fit back into this previous world, and you come back with so much experience that you can never explain to them. They can't understand. Of course, they heard about it, but they can't really feel what you have felt. So all that you've said there, it's so important, to build back a better, I don't want to say better, but you know what I'm trying to say, to rebuild the country. It's so important. And thank you for bringing up that important element. You've mentioned the ultimate beneficiary, and that's a novel rooted in corporate governance, corporate intrigue. What inspired you to write this, Roman? And does fiction help you see different elements? Does it help you see power dynamics differently in your professional life?
Thank you for this question, because I always glad and ready to say some words about my great work. I consider it great work, my book Ultimate Beneficiary, because it is really an assumption of my 10 years of my very active and very colorful, maybe, professional career. Because I worked to write this book, I worked as a lawyer, as a corporate secretary, as a manager, as a project manager, as a banker, and even entrepreneur, in order to understand a lot of facets of corporate matters, its core and its inside, and outside matters and relationship, which make this happen, this matter, which we call business. Business in different ways of this very complicated matter. Because to create great corporation, as new post in which I worked when I wrote this book, two simple guys, two owners, two founders of this company, they had to be everything. They had to be owners, they had to be managers, they had to be deliver guys, they had to be postmen, they had to be drivers, and so on, and understand all these processes. And after that, when I became corporate secretary in this company, I understood that my experience should be summoned in the work which will reveal all these matters, all my experience and how it works. And my book divided into 8 parts, which start with corporate governance, then goes operational management, then goes strategic moves, then a system of controls, human resources, and so on. I tried to describe in this book all parts of living of such creature as a corporation. And before writing this book, I started to read a book with the title Quiet Leadership. Unfortunately, I didn't read it till the end, but introduction, there is very nice insight. The author of this book said that theoretical material, it can be in science, in business, in every sphere. It can be, stored in your memory very good, and neural connections are created more firmly when you feel some emotion towards this information. That's why I decided that my book in 8 parts about not very easy matters like corporate governance, financial, strategic matters will be more efficiently remembered by reader when it will be in the form of novel, when every strategic move, every decision will be showed to the reader through the conversations of main characters, through the conflicts between some main characters, managers with owners, or maybe supervisory board member with another board member, and so on. And I felt that I coped with these tasks. And moreover, sometime I tried to understand what is a core for detective, because my ultimate beneficiary is almost to the end of the book. This person is unknown to the end of my book. And it is really detective because everybody tries to understand who is really the ultimate beneficiary. And as I know, it is considered as a good detective book. The reader changes his mind who is the main unknown person 3 or 2 times. They say, oh, that guy is the main person. And I coped with this task to create a mystery and to build a narrative and to tell the story through the book, also telling the readers how it works in real corporate world.
It makes sense using fiction because I think that's something that, personally I would like also. I don't know how good I would be writing it, but definitely reading it, I would enjoy it. But that's an interesting way you put that, Roman, sort of using your personal experiences and then fictionalizing it, especially these corporate governance processes you mentioned, being a lawyer, things to do with monitoring, etc. And moving back onto the element of your current role, I'm thinking, did that help you to understand what systems are being put in place? This is not meant to be a controversial question, but anywhere there are issues of corruption and accountability, etc. When you look at procurement, whether you're in UK, USA, South Africa, Sweden, Australia, whatever, there's always the same. And I'm wondering, is that being looked at in terms of your current role to build trust going forward as you build up this new service again?
In terms of conducting management in state-owned properties, state-owned companies, it is almost in every case, you should cope with crisis management. Before my current position, I also was in 2 state-owned companies. I was the head of supervisory board, and there were the similar problems with the crisis management because a lot of our state-owned companies, maybe 90%, are from Soviet Union times. It is our legacy, not very nice legacy, I'd say. And in terms of corruption, I'd say that we Ukrainians have a not very good peculiar feature of our character, of our mindset, that if it is state-owned property and it is not very new, we can do with it everything we want, everything that our position can give us tools or rights to do with it. And unfortunately, a lot of not very good managers do with this state property not very nice, conduct them, manage them not very nicely. They try to use it in their own personal interests, including selling of property, using it in their own aims. And of course, it is a ground for a huge amount of not very nice movements, not very nice decisions and actions, which we can say that are not in the perimeter of integrity. And it is definitely a corruption thing. My own mindset, I am maybe glad and happy of that I can't do such things because I am from a real business, not state business, not a state-owned business, from, entrepreneur society, and I'm thinking in another way. And it's hard to do it, to manage to create new things, to maybe seek for investors, to conduct some creativity in state-owned business, to think how to make something, how to earn money in business way, in a strict way which did your predecessor. Yes. And all this, when you are doing that, some guys, some persons, some authorities see all that actions that you are conducting, and they think, maybe this guy trying to create something new to have his own personal benefit from that, if you understand what I'm trying to say. That's why sometimes it's a pity for myself when I am doing right things, when I'm thinking about right things. But another guys, another people, another authorities see these moves, these actions, these ideas of mine, of my team, and they think about me as you are the same as anybody else. You are trying to do it, and not for the state, not for the armed forces, not for supply chains, not for, services for our armed forces. You are trying to do the best, but in your own personal interests. And it's a pity because it's not true, because you are thinking about something more higher than your personal interest, because, there is, if I'm not mistaken, some triangle of Maslow. Yes, you've heard about that, about people's needs. Yes, there are 5, if I'm not mistaken, 5 levels of people's need. And I can say for sure that by my previous life, thankfully to my previous business, to my previous work, now I fulfilled a lot of these needs by the triangle of Maslow. And I don't need now to have, another dirty money or another authorities which I don't want to have. I have everything I want. Now my mission is to conduct, to manage on my own place all I have, all I can, to make Ukraine great. It's my mission, it's my desire, and that's why now I am on my current position, on state-owned company, on state-owned concern, which is connected with armed forces directly. And I am trying to do my best to help my country to win this war on my own position.
And you are doing a good job, Roman. That type of principled behavior, that kind of integrity, it's really what leadership is about for myself personally. It's something that I can admire, that kind of role model. And I want to thank you for that answer to a bit of a tricky question, I guess. And you mentioned doing what you can to help Ukraine win the war. And that's taking many shapes. One of the ways that's interesting at the moment is that the ministry has recently introduced gender-specific uniforms and modern modular gear. And could you walk us through how the production and supply is going?
Tony, thank you for this question. Yes, I can confirm that we made I'd say, a huge step in gender matters, in gender attention to this matter, to women's service in armies. Due to newest data, in our armed forces, the service of women rised to 20%. And it is exactly a huge amount in digits. And of course, this matter is highly reveals our desire to win this war and a desire to invite into armed forces all society, whether it is men or women, as it is in Israel, yes, if I'm not mistaken, because in this country, everybody should have their part of their life to spend in armed forces. And now, as to say about uniform, I can't say a lot about it because I personally and our concern doesn't take part in this supply of uniform. But as I understand, as I know, now our agencies of supply of armed forces, they called DOT, three letters in Ukraine. I'll try to say how it is titled in English. It's State Operator of Staff. This division of Ministry of Defense, they are in charge of supplying more and more uniform for women and more fitting our uniform, also domestic ways of serving, including gender peculiarities, if I'm not mistaken how to say it. So that's why, it's unfortunately everything I can cover with this question.
No, that's perfect. Now I want to take a turn really quickly into your martial arts again. And I want to link it. You mentioned earlier you're a blue belt, you're a candidate master of arts. Do you find that this, because you've mentioned discipline previously, integrity, etc., do you find that this has shaped your leadership style at all, or do you find that it's something that you constantly use to develop going forward?
Thank you again for this question. Yes, I'd say it is definitely, shaped my character and discipline and, maybe fighting mindset in terms of understanding that every period of your life is like you're entering on tatami. Tatami is a cover in judo, yes, Japanese word. And when you stamp on it, you bend in front of your sparring partner, and this sparring partner can be your personal relationships, your career, your health life, your interactions between you and your parents, and so on and so on. And if you trying to incorporate your skills in martial arts, if you are trying to be concentrated and aim-oriented, target-oriented, goal-oriented, you always win, and you try when it is win-win mindset. Yes, of course, definitely martial arts, very different. Whether it is judo, it is wrestling. Whether it is hand-to-hand fighting, it is something like karate. And if it is capoeira, it is like dance in Brazil. It's Brazil way of dancing and martial arts. And all these kinds of martial arts I tried by myself. And it is cool. And it is your own mindset to be strong, not only in terms of your physical strengths, to be strong in your attitude to life and to people. You can use your power and your weaknesses, as you know, in judo principle. Judo is based on principle when you use the energy and move of your opponent to fight him. That's my understanding of my background in terms of sports and particular in martial arts. It is good basis, whether in physical way and in psychological way for men, especially for men. Thank you for this question.
Thank you for that, Roman. And do you think that women also have a place in martial arts? I know for myself, I have 2 boys at home, and I do want them to do martial arts also. Because as you mentioned, for men or for boys, it's, sometimes, I don't want to, get much flack for saying this, but sometimes boys have a lot, they tend to be a bit more keen to fight, and maybe we are socialized that way. But for me, I want my boys to also do some sort of martial art to channel their energy. You mean it like that?
I also have a boy, and I tried him to attend some martial arts like jiu-jitsu, but he didn't tend to do that. He likes more swimming or playing football or playing tennis. It's his own choice. As I mentioned from the very beginning, I made my choice when I was 10. He is now 11. And now I'm maybe more trying to look at him, but not to force him to do something. I try to understand, to hear his desires and his point of view to the ways of sports he wants to attend. And of course, I want him to train something, but not if he doesn't like martial arts, let it be so. Let it be tennis or maybe football. And if to say about your question about women, our school in 90s, when I first came to our school of judo, they were the best team of women judo team in Ukraine. Our trainer, he trained Ukrainian team for Europe competitions and even for competitions on Olympic Games. That's why, very often I had a wrestling session with the girls, and they performed very great. I like when women are very shaped, strong, and good feeling and good looking. And every sport, I'm sure, is good for every woman, from fitness to hand fighting.
If you ever thought, these guys, they deserve a drink, you're not wrong. Buy us a beer at undergroundstrategy.com/support. Fuel the banter, fund the strategy. Cheers. Back to the action.
And I agree with that. And on that point, going from this kind of individual type of defense, you mentioned judo and how men and women can fight in different sports. How do you see the future defense of Ukraine? So it's quite a jump now to that macro level, maybe moving closer to NATO standards, but how do you see that defense looking in the future?
In terms of defense, the whole country, I see that maybe it should be the full-scale national mobilization. In terms, every citizen of Ukraine should feel that we are in state of war. Unfortunately, I should say that not everybody in our society in Ukraine feels that there is a war. Because in our cities, in west regions of Ukraine, in Kyiv even, there are a lot of military servants around, but still we don't feel fully enough that there is a war, unfortunately. It's internal way of defense to have full-scale feeling that there is state of war, full-scale mobilization. And if to say about external factors of our defense, of course, it is, great union with European countries, a real union, and with NATO, with USA, and, very effective policy in trying to unite with European countries, looking to our own enemy. If to say in plain words, being on the same page with our European partners. And it is the work of our Ukrainian people in the sphere of diplomatic matters.
That makes good sense to me. And I'm wondering, with all this experience and all the things that you're doing now as the Deputy CEO in this concern in terms of the Ministry of Defense, all this work that you're doing, is there maybe another book coming along in the future, Roman?
Tony, thank you again for your question. In my head, I have maybe 3 books ready to be revealed. But now, in our Ukrainian, there is one Ukrainian great phrase, "Не на часі." We say, now it isn't time for it. There are another challenges in my life nowadays. And now I simply don't have time, don't have energy, and even don't have real desire to create new book, theoretical product, when I should make some practical steps in order to win our war. And after that, maybe when I will be on my pension, on my retirement, I will maybe product 2 or maybe 3 new books, of course, because the material for these books are already in my head.
Well, I look forward to those books when they do come along, Roman. And just to close off, what else would you consider to be of great interest or importance for our audience about Ukraine and its struggle?
Of course, you should try our borscht. About Ukraine and our struggle, I'd like to encourage your audience to read the book which me and you together, it's Management in Times of War. There are some interesting points, interesting things in really management during the war. And this book tells us about it. And during the war, a lot of things, even your daily life, has another color. And you should feel it. If you're not in Ukraine, you should maybe see some YouTube channels which reveal some matters in Ukraine. Or you should read such books like Management in Times of War. And of course, you should listen such cool podcasts which produced by Tony Garcia. That's maybe now all that can I remember and can I say about us, but one or maybe one more thing about Ukrainians. Just a couple days we discussed Management in Times of War in one of bookstores in Kyiv in English. Yes, this talk was in English, dedicated to our publishing in Sweden. Thankfully to you, Tony, also for that. And we all discussed why we still alive as a nation, why we such good in our struggle. And we all agreed that, defeat never is an option for Ukrainians. The not winning in Russia isn't an option for us, for our nation and for our every person, whether it is child, man or woman. Defeat for Ukrainians is not option. That may be the main thing which you should know about us.
Really powerful words there, and thank you for your kind words about the podcast. Max and I are delighted, and also the Swedish version of Management in Times of War. Great for Kostia, for all of us, for yourself and your publishing house to have the book translated in so many languages. And of course, again, to mention Max, who was really the main translator on that work. But of course, it's wonderful to have you, Roman. We look forward to inviting you back to let us know how your work's going in the Ministry of Defense. And lastly, a big thank you for all you do to the war effort.
Thank you very much that you gave me a chance to tell about it a bit. Thank you very much, Tony.